Hi, this is Dr. Dobias here, and I am here to give you a really quick course on raw diet. Here is a really brief introduction. If you have any questions or if you're looking for details, there will be a few links. I hope you'll enjoy it and that you'll find the most important information right here. First, the safety. If you are concerned about bacteria in bones, you can just click on the link here and read a little more. Otherwise, the most important part in raw diet feeding is to feed proportions that will be complete over the period of the next 2 or 4 weeks. The basic principles of raw diet are based on the original diet of canines. It would be meat, bones, and some plant material, and maybe some fruit, because they're scavengers and they like to run around. So generally, the first word that you have to remember is variety. Variety of different kinds of meats, and the percentage of the overall diet when it comes to meat is about 50%. So 50% of raw meat. You can feed chicken and turkey and rabbit and venison and sheep and goat and kangaroo and all those. I do not like feeding too much beef, buffalo and bison, the large animal meat. First, dogs do not do as well, mainly because it's inflammatory. It has more arachidonic acid, which is inflammatory, but also dogs in nature would not be hunting large animals as much as the smaller animals, so just try to keep it in mind and do not feed beef more often than once a week. When it comes to bones, I usually suggest about 20 to 25% bones. You should avoid the big marrow bones because they're too hard and they can cause fractures of your dog's teeth and can be very painful and expensive. If you have any questions about bones, you can just click on the link and you'll find more information. Vegetables. I recommend feeding about 15 to 25% vegetables. Remember that most of the veggies should be raw, with the exception of, let's say, cooked squashes or yams or some lentils that you can add. And once again, 15 to 25% vegetables is ideal. If you have any questions about vegetables, you can just click on the link here and it'll give you more information about what to feed and what to avoid. Organs. Organs are super important. Obviously, dogs would eat them in nature, and they have very beneficial nutritional qualities. They not only provide building blocks for the different organs, but they also have very specific nutrients. Now, there's one organ that you have to be a little careful about feeding, and that is liver. If you overfeed liver, you can create hypervitaminosis A. And more details is at the link right here. When it comes to organs, you should be feeding about 5% of the overall volume of food. Once again, you don't need to make it balanced every day, but over 2 or 4 weeks, just keep it in mind that you should be feeding 50% meat, 25% bones, 15 to 25% vegetables, and 5% organs. Now, how much to feed? I usually recommend starting with a simple formula. If your dog is 25 pounds, you go 25 times 10, which is 250 grams of food. I know that this is very much a combination of the metric and imperial system, but it works quite well. And if you do not know how many grams is in ounces or vice versa, you can just go online and find a converter right here. Click on this link. Now, some dogs may eat less, some dogs may eat more. The active dogs can go up to 2 times the amount. Also, smaller dogs need a little more. So what you need to do is to adjust the food, and I usually adjust by 20%. When I'm kind of looking at my dog and see whether he or she is overweight or underweight, I feel the ribs. If you cannot count them, that means that your dog is overweight. If you're able to count them, and if you see them and you give your dog a bath, then it would be that your dog is underweight. Now, all I want to say is that raw diet feeding is very, very safe. In my opinion, it's safer than feeding kibble. I've been feeding raw diet for 20 plus years, and I have not seen any serious problems, and I've seen many problems with processed food and kibble. So just to kind of give you an idea, obviously problems can happen, especially if the meat is not good quality, but it is much less likely than if you're feeding kibble.